chaos, obnoxious overkill. A few things that come to mind when I think of the Warhammer 40K universe.
Crazy.
Waves and waves of ruthless enemies throwing themselves to the slaughter.
Hey.
Relentless forces of destruction. At one point in time, I was not a big Warhammer fan. I had always played Total War games, and Warhammer came along and kind of flipped the franchise on its side. But ever since I was, painting miniatures, I've always had my eyes on Warhammer and its obnoxious overkill nature. Something that naturally I wasn't really keen to, being a stickler for realism. But it just kept creeping in on me every day, the Warhammer bug. I just would see these awesome models and these incredible paint jobs and hear about this crazy lore of this horrible universe. And it slowly, each and every day, just consumed me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to have some Space Marines, so I went down to my local Nerd Haven and I dropped some bones. After like an hour of deliberation, I went with a combat patrol of Space Marines and some Xeno Sojokari army, because they looked badass. For months, I had been plotting which Space Marine chapter, what Xenos army, what color scheme, and finally the day was here, and I was a little bit excited. Mokubean gave the A-OK, but disapproved of the moot green. I figured I'd get right to it. I wanted to paint Space Marines, so I had some assembly to do. Also, I recommend a police-grade tactical flashlight to find your bits that you drop. And here's the thing, man. Look how cool this model is. That's my thing. It looks badass. It looks cool. I know a lot of people have Space Marines, but you know what? They look badass. Just like how that looks badass. So it's time to prime them up. And we got to painting, and at this point, I was just trying to figure out like what direction I'm gonna go. I kind of wanted a cool tactical look to the Space Marines with a little bit of like heavy metal edge highlighting to practice that. And I wasn't really sure where we were gonna go with the video. I was just gonna show my color scheme, but I did have like a lot of trouble gluing one of these heavy suppressor dudes onto their little stand here, and eventually it came off, and I didn't want to try and re-glue it onto what Games Workshop provided, and I kind of had an idea. I was thinking maybe I should do something different with the basing with this guy. And that's when I went to go feed my mom's cat, and I found this badass rock in her backyard, and I picked it up and put it in my pocket and brought it home. I had originally intended on like breaking it up with a hammer and using it on bases, as like big rock shards. And I was trying to figure out how I could do that, even like hit it with a screwdriver at one point, but then I started thinking, and I started admiring the rock more, and that's when it hit me. Let's use the whole rock. I was like, let me just put the whole thing, blam, on a base. That's kind of obnoxious. That's kind of overkill. It's a perfect idea. I went to the Council of Reddit to see if they would declare that this was appropriate of Warhammer, and they declared big gun, big rock, it's Warhammer. So I painted this base and made it look like a little broken road, and I was super stoked about this. And this kind of inspired me to do the same thing, given how flat the surface was of this rock, and also it seemed like it could be some big floating piece of road, so I decided to do the same thing that I did. So I used Morden Earth to make my road. I would have used Astro Granite, but that's not what I had. And I just spread a thin layer, because where I'm from, in the summer, as a kid, they would lay asphalt, and it would be like super black and gummy, and that's kind of what I had pictured. And so I figured it'd be like some black asphalt road that had weathered down and was just chunky and nasty. So spread a nice thin layer with some gloopy bits too, just so those look like bigger chunks of debris in the road. So yeah, we're gonna want this to dry for a little while, so I'm gonna set it aside, and we need to work on our Space Marine in the meantime. Here I am looking like I had just gotten back from an ashwagandha trip. I look like somebody from the Beatles. Yeah, so here's my color concept. I kind of went with purple and white. A little bit of a clone trooper, stormtrooper influence here. There were several things that influenced me in this color concept, like Splinter Cell. Here you can see the glowing eyes that I made with the Tesseract glow. And I also realized the purple, I feel like, came from The Phantom, if anybody remembers that. It was an old movie. Here's some nice footage of my hand. And yeah, so I got to a point where I was happy with how the Modern Earth had dried, and I decided to paint my yellow stripes on there. And I gotta tell you, I have a new thing for painting roads. I really, really enjoy painting yellow on what is supposed to be asphalt. I'm noticing I have like a thing for industrial stuff, and I think it might come from like where I live is constantly under construction. Since I was a child, it's just something, there's always a new road being laid down, there's always building something, there's always construction going on. So I kind of want to lean into that a little bit when it comes to Warhammer. It's relatively close. Alright, looks pretty good. And now we need to add some depth to it, so we're going to do some dry brushing. And that's the Dawnstone or something like that, but it looks really good. Makes it look like weathered, you know? And look, before your eyes you have a road. Like, it's really simple, you know? And I love it. I personally love watching people dry brush, so I figured I would let y'all just watch me dry brush for a minute. But yeah, look, man, it's starting to look real and alive, and as if, like, you know, hundreds of years have gone by. If you're where I'm from, only maybe 10 years have gone by, but yeah, it looks like a legitimate road here. But let's keep going. Let's add some more depth. So I added some browns and some greens in there to kind of, you know, just kind of break it up. But in the interest of detail, I had this idea, like, what if he was like shooting back on his jetpack, just laying down lead shells, you know? Let's make it more interesting. That's when I remembered, I have a 3D printer. Come on! So I went over to Deadly Print Studio. They have amazing special effects stuff that you can print from your home if you have a 3D printer like me, or you can get the physical copy as well, but they'll take your minis to the next level, so I knew that's what I needed. I can't really sculpt this out of putty, you know, so let's use a 3D printer. And I got this badass shell projectile trail and a muzzle flash as well, and I'm not going to go outside and prime these with Chaos Black, so we're just going to use some brush on primer and then paint these up. And be careful, they're small. Yeah, paint them up. Alright, so we got those done, and I had a weird misprint here. So I decided to glue them up and then also just kind of play around and figure out like where I was going to position this big jetpack exhaust fume action on what piece of the rock, you know, because that's pretty substantial with where we want to lay everything else out. And I know I wanted the road stripes to be visible because I was proud of that. So we had a little bit of stuff stuff to do here, and now he's all glued up, and we're just gonna let him rest. Now, I love video games, and I love Easter eggs in video games, and so I figured I would lay an Easter egg of my own in this piece, and here we have a Warhammer-ish, like kind of a Warhammer-looking head, and an Imperial Eagle from my Napoleonic sprue, and so I figured I would lay this as like a little hidden Easter egg to my casualties piece and the Napoleonic stuff that I've done in the Napoleonic Grimdark post. If you've been riding with me since the get-go. So if not, I'll put the little thing up so you can check that video out. But yeah, I figured I wanted to lay him in some bloody mud. Being that bloody mud is kind of my thing. And yeah, I thought this would be like kind of a cool, fun little piece, a little detail within this tiny little mini diorama. Also, kind of knew that this needed cool barbed wire element to it, so we're gonna twist some barbed wire up, scrunch it up, and throw it in there. And here I just put another big plop of Sterling battle wire because I'm gonna use it as an adhesive for the barbed wire. I'm just gonna go ahead and plop this down and then push the barbed wire into the Sterling battle wire, and it'll dry and kind of hold it in there. And then we'll hit it with like a little bit of glue, some plastic glue to try and lock it in as well. But I figure that's how I would plan it. And there we go. We got like a cool, oh man, I forgot. I spilled a bunch of a bunch of red paint. And yeah, you know what? Hey, whatever, we recovered well after this, but I figured that was an omen to add more gore to this scene, so we're getting out the blood splatter razor brush. Looks pretty bloody and muddy, if you don't mind me saying. But yeah, I'm pretty excited with this, and I'm very proud of my rock. And you know, I'm digging it, but I feel like it needs a little bit more, you know, like. So let's play around here. I feel like when I just play around with it, you know, I can figure out what it needs. And I figured out it needed a blood skid mark, as if this head had been blown across the road and wound up in the mud. I feel like that's pretty Warhammer. And then why don't we make it during the snow? Yeah, like it's some like winter forge world. And there's blood all over the snow and mud. And I was so proud of my rock that you know what? It could be its own piece. It could be its own standalone piece. And I got one of those little spinny things, and we're it's business. We're showtime, baby. Showtime, baby. Alright, so the rock's done, and the Jetback is done printing after like 3 failed prints. We finally got the feel of it. And so here we are. We gotta take it off, and we gotta do our little post-processing routine here, which I'm getting a little bit better at. But 3D printing has been pretty fun, and I will say there's so much potential to be had here. So expect to see some pretty fun things coming from the printer in the future. And we're curing it, and it's done. It's ready to paint. I got to trim it up a little bit, but man, look at that. Shout out to Deadly Print Studios for really making awesome stuff. And this is the first time I've ever painted fire and smoke before. Actually, that's not true, but to this scale at least. So I just went ahead and followed their YouTube tutorial on how to paint fire and smoke and things like that, which you can find on their page. And I feel like I did a pretty good job. I don't have fluorescent paints, which they were using, but you know what? Either way, it's something to get in the future, and I had a lot of fun doing this and blending this and working on the different colors. I don't usually paint, you know, this sort of palette, so it was a fun little mini painting project. This shit is fire, bruh. And man, the two models together, wow, they look really cool. So it's time to glue this thing together, and let me tell you, I didn't videotape this part because I had a rough time. But after a few attempts, we got it, and yeah. Now it was sturdy. It was time to load it up onto the rock to figure out the final formation, and played around with it for a little bit, and then finally came to something. And look, we can, oh wow, look at this. I have been working on this for a few days now, and I just wanted to look at it for a little while from all different angles, think about it. And that's when I was like, you know what? It needs more obnoxious material here. It needs mounds and mounds of spent shells, like he's just been unloading. So I rolled up some putty and printed off some shells, and kind of made like a little shell mound. Went ahead and painted it black with base Abaddon black, and then golded it up and glued them on there to make it look like our Space Marine here had just been laying the lead down. I hate this super glue. And yeah, boom. And with that, that's pretty much it. Wow, man. This is dope. Had to put it on the spinner and check it out. But yeah. So the next day, I touched up a little details where the glue was, and time to document this. One of my favorite parts of the process. I love showing my work with you guys. Yeah, and now I'm presenting
Overkill.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and for supporting the channel. This is such a blast, and I'm going to go ahead and post the link to my Patreon in the description here. So if you want to support the channel and help me grow and make more content like this, go ahead and follow the link. Every little bit of support means so much to me, and I can't thank y'all enough.